Hey, I'm Adam, founder of Build the Process, and I want to tell you about why companies struggle to scale, why they struggle with process so much, and also give you a framework to address some of these issues so that you can become a scalable company. Now, when companies first come to us, they're always frustrated with the inability to scale, the process and knowledge that has gotten them by and really made them successful is all captured in their heads. It's stuck there. And ultimately, they're lacking the standards and accountability as around their work, how they do things, how they operate, to really hold people accountable so that they can continue to grow. And now, ultimately, it's a fire drill constantly. And they realize that something has to change to get them to the next level because what got you here won't get you there. And the smartest companies realize that. But to get from chaos to scalability and clarity and a strong foundation to grow from, there's a gap. And that gap occurs because at the end of the day, it's not because they don't have good people and subject matter experts. It's not because they don't run on process. Like every business runs on process. And it's not because they don't want better process. They lack the capacity to address process and operations themselves internally because they're busy running the day to day. We see this all the time. They don't know what good process looks like. They just have never been shown. They've been at this company for so long that they have no perspective around what works in the market and doesn't work. They're just used to doing their job. Oftentimes, when you say to someone, go document your process, go work on operations, they're like, okay, great. How do I even do that? There's never any clear plan in place to actually go execute on that. So ultimately, you're stuck in analysis paralysis for quite a while here. And this is why so many process and operational efforts never get off the ground, is because there's no execution behind it. And so even if these companies do, let's say, a perfect storm, hey, let's work on process and operations, they only focus on one thing, which is just writing it down. And honestly, that gets you way further than I would say 90% of companies out there. You'd be shocked how many companies we come across, and this is the norm. They just have absolutely nothing written down. We ask them for documentation, and that's okay. Like, you have to get to where you are, and obviously you're successful doing what you're doing, but it's the norm that companies don't have process. But at the end of the day, it's not their fault either, is because they're often lied to online with oversimplified books or frameworks or just YouTube videos that tell them to do one thing, but never show them a clear path to execute and get to a place of better process and operations. Now, even if they do write down those processes, which congratulations, it's a huge step, they're often still frustrated because they're still not scalable. People aren't following the process, and process just still isn't working for them. It was a thing they did like 6 months ago because they thought that they had to, but never did anything with it beyond that. So ultimately, this is where we've seen a lot of problems arise, is that you've got a frustrated operator, the business isn't scalable, they don't know what to do, and they're just like sitting in limbo. So at the end of the day, we've found that it's not just about writing your processes down, it's about embedding process deep into your company culture. And that is what's going to allow you to scale. Now, when it comes to company culture, I've thought a lot about this. And embedding process into that culture is something that our team has developed a model around. So I'm going to put the model here. It's the process culture flywheel. We developed this to help companies strengthen process culture and get over that hump of just what do we do with written down process? How do we actually make this work for us and create a flywheel when it comes to our process and operations? Now, I've got these components written here on the board, and I'll walk through these. So at your beginning here, your processes and knowledge are really at the core of the flywheel. And this is exactly what companies focus on: writing it down, documenting what's in their head, putting it on paper. Some might even visually map it if you're pretty advanced, but capturing process. This can be a checklist, SOP, whatever you want to call it. it's at least written down somewhere and captured. So that's step one. That's at our core. All companies need to do this. This is also where many companies stop. The good companies continue on to focus on these aspects. And now they may not know it because the flywheel here is something that exists in businesses. They just don't know about the model and how it all works together and how to actually like work purposefully on the model. So after you've captured all of your processes and knowledge, you have to use it to train every new hire that walks in the building. Huge mistake companies make. There's just no hiring plan in place when it comes to onboarding and what do we do with this person when they first show up. Huge mistake, number one. And number two, even if they do have some sort of an onboarding plan, they don't go back to their company process and documentation. It just turns into a big shadow day. And that's not scalable either, right? We need to use our processes and knowledge as we train people every single time. We need to have a plan in place. So we always recommend having like a 7 to 14 day training schedule as just absolute table stakes. Somebody's coming in, that hiring manager needs to have the 7 to 14 day plan. Like, what are you doing every day? I know it's a lot of upfront work, but if you're hiring for a role fairly frequently, this is a good use of your time because it gives the new person coming in a much better experience, and it quite frankly makes the hiring manager's life a lot easier. And then plus, a 30, 60, 90-day plan. A lot of companies talk about that. Not many do it well. A 30, 60, 90-day plan is really what lays out success. So think about 7 to 14 training schedule. You have to define it. And then the 90-day plan really kind of paints the picture into the 90 days from now. It's hard to build the schedule for 90 days, but having that 7 to 14 day plan schedule is much, much, much more efficient. Now that we've built training, we use our processes and knowledge as part of our training. We need to make sure that once people are onboarded, that they can get easy, quick answers that leverage your process and knowledge. So what we always like to recommend is that you have some sort of a company playbook, a central repository, so many different places to put it. I would honestly look inward and say, are you using Google or Microsoft? If it's Google, Google Docs. If it's Microsoft, use SharePoint. Don't go buying other softwares that promise they're going to solve your problems. Just look internally at your current suite. So you're going to need what we call a knowledge-based playbook. Got plenty of examples that we can share with you on what that looks like as like step one here. So that's a great first step. If you really want to get crazy with it, quick access, we can even build an AI GPT on top of that knowledge base playbook to where the GPT is getting its answers from the knowledge base, so that when people are in their day-to-day and they're sitting down and they just want to chat with a bot and to get the most relevant answers based on your company information, your company process, your company resources, they can fire up that GPT in no time and get the answer in 2 seconds, because you're lying to yourself if you think your good employees are going back to their training modules, but you need training, got to have it. They're not going back to what they learned in training to then reference that material and then go apply that answer in their day-to-day. It's a firefight most days. You need to give people quick access. So playbook, step one. If you want to get crazy, GPT, step two. We help companies build those all the time. It's critical. It's a huge game changer. Highly recommend it. Now, after we've captured process, we've gone through training, in the day-to-day they have access, it's still not enough. You need to bring in and train your managers on holding people accountable. And so what we always recommend for that is a one-to-one cadence plus an agenda that goes with that one-to-one, so that the manager knows the agenda, the employee knows the agenda. There's no surprises when you come in to meet. And then you also have to train that manager on creating clarity and making sure that they hold that employee to your documented standards, because everything comes back to this, right? If we've done the hard work to capture our processing knowledge and we're not training on it and giving people access to it, and our managers aren't constantly going back and referencing that and pointing to it to hold people accountable, it's a waste of time. So set up the one-on-one cadence, and then create what we call our clarity framework, also known as the follow-through framework. It has 4 simple questions to make sure that the examples and instruction the manager is getting is crystal clear to the employee, so there's no questions there. We're happy to share that framework as well. There's a video that we have on that on our website. Now, we've captured our processes and knowledge. We have a training plan in place for all new hires. Once they're onboarded, they have easy access through the knowledge base and the GPT. Our managers are holding people accountable to our standards that have been defined. Now we have to talk about systems. Systems come in where we write down process and knowledge, and I think this is where some other books or resources that you might find that are oversimplified go wrong. They live in a world where a manager is standing there watching somebody with a clipboard and saying, yep, they put on their goggles, or yep, that they adhered to this process, which is like so archaic and painful to think about that it's horrible to think about, right? So instead, what you want is you want to have your processes built into some systems, and they can be basic systems that help people do the work associated with processes. Now, what I mean by that is if you can build your process into like a work management system or your industry service system or your service delivery system or your ERP or whatever system you have in your business that helps you do work and you can capture information in, you're going to want to look at that system to see, can we tailor our process into this system? Because what systems do, they help remind people what work to do and when, so that they don't have to just sit down and think about reading an entire process every day to remind themselves of what to do. That's where systems come in. So it helps orchestrate work. It helps facilitate it through the flow of their day-to-day. It helps remind people on due dates, things like that. And this is why process is so hard, is because process changes fundamentally from time to time. That means you have to update your training. That means you have to make sure that you update your process in your knowledge base. That means you also have to make sure that managers know that things have changed and they're now operating from the changed process or expectation or whatever it is. I'm talking about process a lot, but this is just expectations across the entire company. And then you have to retool your systems from time to time. And people roll their eyes and they say, well, that sucks and that's really hard. But that is what the good companies do. Those are the companies that can actually scale and grow and not be bottlenecked by the constraints of human capital. Because when you get all these things right, you can really do much more with far less. You can be far more efficient. So that's why systems are so important. And we even have some basic things that we consider systems as well we can share with you. One is a daily checklist of key tasks someone in that seat has to sit down and do, and that's just on a piece of paper. We can give you more information on that, but if you think about, if I had 10 things to do and one of them was check that weird view in the corner of the CRM that reminds me to do or follow up with these 3 clients, right? There's a lot of that goes on in businesses, and sometimes we just need a reminder of a basic key task checklist of, if I sit down every day and do these 10 things, these actions facilitate the process forward, and I don't have to go read my training modules or SOP documents or these things to remember to do that, because that's not realistic. People aren't reading your SOPs in their day-to-day. They're not going back on their training modules. So if someone is lying to you about that, or you think that's reality, you're a little misguided, but that's okay. It's not your fault. No one has really ever laid out these components as they all work together to be, useful or in a way that you can actually take and apply to your business. So regardless if you didn't learn anything else today, is that its processes and operations is more than writing process down. You have to make sure it's part of your training. You have to give people access to it once they're onboarded through that knowledge base in GPT. This is huge for us right now. Such a game changer. Accountability. This is where it's not that much fun for managers to remind and hold people accountable, but they have to. You have to manage people. And then you have to give them the right tools and systems to make all of this less hard for them to remember to do daily. So all that said, this framework ultimately gives you the ability to scale over here. And that's what companies want. We help companies go from unscalable to scalable. We help create scalable companies through this framework, working with your people who are smart people that know how to do the things in your company. It's just all trapped upstairs. And that's okay. This has never really been laid out before in a way that's makes sense like this. So this is the framework we've built after years and years of working with our clients. I've battle tested this thing over and over and over again, but I keep coming back to these components that all have to work together in order for you to be successful. And so if you want to create a scalable business, become a scalable business, learn how we do these things, reach out. We have a ton of resources, free resources on all these as well. We'd be happy to talk with you. But at the end of the day, if you want to become scalable, you have to do each one of these things well. It's simple, but difficult to do. We can help you get there. Let's talk.